But yeah, it's weird how like there is a group of people who don't like Prime, like Metroid Prime. Although I'm convinced it's just people who don't like FPS games. Dare I go into a Andrew Dobson rant again? But there is a weird version, like I like to bring him up because he is like the prime example. He's the prime example. Like there's a subsect of people who just associate, you know, first-person shooters with like jocks and bullies, I guess. Because Dobson got bullied by like jocks as a kid, quote unquote bullied. I don't think he was really bullied as much as he says he was. And so he associates anything related to like normies and like the mainstream with it being bad. So like FPS games they're made for normies, so they're bad. I say quote unquote like Dobson was quote unquote bullied. Reading his because people haven't encountered him before, and apparently it sounds like he's just hostile to anybody who tries to befriend him. So like there was one example where someone tried to befriend him at when he was at an art college, and they actually tried to they made an effort to like get to know Dobson, like to sit down with him and talk to him, because he didn't know who he was at the time. He thought he was just another student there, and Dobson like pushed him away, like cursed at him, and like clearly like didn't want to be around him. Just this normal guy who tried to converse with him. So it gives me the impression that Dobson may have like not necessarily been bullied, but like maybe just like interpreted people trying to socialize with him as bullying, if that makes sense. I'm convinced that Dobson has spent his whole life with people trying to befriend him, and him not quite knowing like how to read their social cues and interpreting it as them just being them bullying him. Although I do not think Dobson has any mental illness. I think he's just a normal guy who's hostile to everybody who tries to interact with him. But yeah, he's the example I go to think of when I think of people who don't like Metroid Prime. But yeah, I'm fascinated by Andrew Dobson, which is why I talk about him so much. Because I think with Andrew Dobson, the fact that he's like just a normal guy who just acts that way, like it's not the result of any, you know, mental illness or something. It is just, he's just that guy. Like that's who he is. I think that's way more interesting. Just because we all have a little bit of Andrew Dobson, you know, in our personality. And he's a good example of what happens if we let it get too far. But yeah, I love Dobson for how interesting he is. And I actually kind of wish he'd come back to the internet, just because he was so fascinating to like learn about his goings on. Because I could talk about lolcows all day, but to me, I need to talk about lolcows who are like, they are the way they are, not because of something out of their control, just like because of the way, you know, their personality is or the way they act. That's why Dobson is so fascinating to me. To me, he is the guy, like the example I think of when I hear people who don't like Metroid Prime or first-person shooters in general. They're like, I only play 2D games. I only prefer, you know, Metroidvania style Super Metroid games. And I'm like, dude, you're missing out. You're missing out on the whole amazing genre, an immersive, innovative genre. He's interesting to me because like I feel like a lot of his opinions are just contrarian opinions, which is why I find it interesting when I recognize people like him, because I do know people, you know, like Dobson. It's just a personality type, although he is taken to the extreme. Like he says his favorite Metroid game is Other M, which is hilarious. I don't think anybody's favorite game is Metroid Other M.